Hello beloveds, thank you for joining me. I'm going to be teaching you today how to memorize tarot. I've been using tarot since I was 9 years old, and I bought a deck of tarot cards when I was 9, and they just called to me. I saw them in the shop window and they were like $20, and at the time when I was 9, that was a lot of money. It's like all the money I had on me, and I was like, that is what I want. And so I ended up buying the deck, and no one in my life knew what they were, and nobody like said anything about it, and I would just like sit there and pore over them. And I've always been a really big reader, and the thing about the tarot is that the book that it came with was so convoluted and so complex, and like each card would have just like 2 sentences with words that I didn't understand. And so I used to just sit there and like try to interpret not only what the tarot meant, but like what the book meant and what it was trying to explain. So then when I was about 11, I had a friend come over to my house, and she was like, these are the devil's cards, and the devil speaks through them. And I was like, I don't think he does. And she's like, yeah. So I put them away in my life, and then when I was 18 again, I was like, oh, I love tarot, so I got them out again. So I've been they've been a big part of my life for like my whole life. I just love them so much. I use them on and off constantly, and if you use the tarot, you know that that they have an energy with them. Each deck has a spirit I believe each deck has a spirit associated with them that kind of works through the cards and guides you. You could think of it however you want. Like, how does the tarot work? I don't know. I think it accesses the subconscious realm. I use it to interact with my guides, my spiritual guides, and also my higher self, and I can kind of tell which one I'm interacting with. And I use the tarot in a different way than I used to, So there's different spreads and things like that you can do to get more information, and that's all very beneficial. And take your journey however that calls to you. I tried to actually create a class on tarot, and the problem was that I realized it was gonna take like 100 years for someone to just take the class, let alone like create it. So the tarot can mean whatever you want it to mean. It can be so deep, and it can be so simple, and it's up to you to decide how deep you want to go into it. I'm just going to focus today on how to memorize the cards, because that's a huge part of the process, and like I think where a lot of people feel inadequate, or like they're not like a real tarot card reader because they haven't memorized the cards or whatever else. And like anything else, it's just about memorization, practice, and your own personal connection with a card. So how we internalize information is just we have to first recognize that the information exists, and then we have to say, okay, that's something that exists, and then we have to incorporate it into our own paradigm, into our own understanding of the world, so that we have a personal relationship to it. And so that can be done with tarot cards, because if you use them on yourself a lot, which some people advise against, because you're just going to be reflecting your own subconscious energies and maybe not the truth of the situation. Like you might interpret things in a different way than they really are, and you're not going to have the clearest perspective in that case. I use tarot cards on myself all the time, so I don't think it's a bad thing. But as I use them, I have personal relationships with what each of the cards means. So if I draw the Queen of Pentacles, this is the deck that I use, it's the Enchanted deck, the Enchanted Tarot, then I have a personal relationship with what she means to me, and what that energy that she embodies represents in my life. And so that is how I have memorized them. And but there's a few little like quick cheats that you can use that I'm going to talk about. I still reference the book. I have most of the cards memorized, but when you switch decks, like you're basically back at square one, because it's like all the images that you've associated meaning to now are different. So the Rider-Waite deck, which I don't know where my Rider-Waite deck is. That's the one that I was raised on, and I love, and a lot of people really recognize that as like the stereotypical tarot. That is a good deck to memorize, because if you're at a party or something and someone's just like, oh, tarot, like read my tarot, and if you've studied another deck, Not that you're doing tarot to impress people at parties, but you might be like, oh, I actually don't know what these cards mean, even if you've memorized your deck that you use. So I memorized the Rider-Waite deck, and I also memorized the Enchanted Tarot. I'm a little bit better with the Enchanted Tarot because it's my favorite deck, and it's what I use on the daily. But I recently downloaded a free app, and the app has the Rider-Waite deck in it. So like I've been having a lot of anxiety lately, and like just wanting to like check tarot, which is not the best thing to do, but I've been checking tarot a lot on my app because it's something I can do when I'm out and about. So check out the free apps that exist. The issue that I have with the apps is that the descriptions of the cards aren't very good. So I would say don't learn the tarot through the app. I would say get a deck, get a couple books, and then decide what you like best. So the reason why I chose the Enchanted Tarot deck is because I like not only the art, it's all like fiber art, so it's all like the scenes are all like crafted out of fabric and a fiber, and so I just find them to be really beautiful. But the majority of the reason why I resonate with this deck is because the actual book itself is very positive, and it has healthy ways of looking at everything. So like maybe you see something and it's like the death card, and you might feel like, oh my god, like this is just like the worst possible thing, someone's gonna die, and that's not what it means. It's so funny when you know tarot and you watch TV and they like use tarot and they're like slamming the cards on the table and it's like death. It is like, it doesn't mean someone's gonna die. Sometimes it does, but I've actually never seen it mean that in anybody's life. It's just the end of a cycle. So anyway, when you see that card, or any kind of card, there's a lot of cards that could have negative connotations that might stress you out, like the Ten of Swords, which is a very dramatic card to get, or the Tower. The book, the way that it's written, really guides you towards seeing the good and what you can do during this period. You know, it gives you advice, like, oh, you know, if you're having the Ten of Swords, you just need to relax and just trust that it can't get any worse, you know, or the Ten of Wands. So that's why I chose that deck. I would experiment with different decks. If somebody has different decks, look at them, see how they feel. Otherwise, Rider-Waite is a great deck, but I don't necessarily think that the books that come with Rider-Waite are very useful or very helpful. They're hard to determine, they're very negative, and it's kind of a bummer. The book that I learned tarot through is called The Introduction to Tarot. It's by Susan Leavitt. Highly recommend this book. It's very straightforward. She actually doesn't even recommend reading reverses, which is, okay, so if you think about reading reverse cards, that just means like if you get it and it's upside down, then that means a totally different thing than if it's right side up. Well, that's double the memorization, okay, first of all. But that is the first and foremost reason why I don't read reverse. The reason why Susan Leavitt gives in this book is that the reverse card always has another card in the tarot that can refer to it. So if you get, you know, a reverse card that means, you know, and if it's reversed, it means you need to actually retreat and be solitude, have solitude. Well, then the tarot has that card. It would just give you the Four of Swords or the Hermit. You know, it's like the tarot has the way to communicate all of the messages to you if you only read the upright. And if you trust that the tarot is going to do that for you, then it will give you the messages that you're looking for in the upright position. Nothing wrong with reading reverses, but I do find them to be a lot more negative, and I don't need that in my life. So this book is great because it has all of the cards, and it has it actually has the Rider-Waite deck and also the Aleister Crowley deck in here. And so you can see both of them, and that can help you learn two decks at once if you're interested in the Aleister Crowley deck. The art is absolutely beautiful in that deck, but it's a little bit dark. So the cheats that I'm going to tell you about are basically numerology and then suits. So tarot has 4 suits, just like a regular deck of cards, and you can actually use a regular deck of cards to do tarot if you want. So if I was going to pull, let's say, the King of Clubs, that's the King of Wands. So that corresponds to the King of Wands in tarot, and I can use that and I can think, oh, what's the King of Wands mean? The only thing that a regular deck of cards is lacking is the major arcana. So the major arcana is like the Fool all the way up to the World. So all of those initial cards like the Sun and Death and the Hermit, the Star, the Magician, the Empress, all of those are major arcana cards. The minor arcana cards correspond to the deck of cards, and not in every deck. So for instance, in my deck, the Enchanted Tarot, it has, instead of, does it have pages? It has princes and princesses, which don't exist in other decks. Where's my book? And so the princes and princesses in my deck are usually really beautiful messengers, and I really appreciate having them in the deck, and they don't exist in the Rider-Waite deck. But yeah, there's pages in it. Let me see. It's got princesses, princes, queens, and kings, so no pages. So the page, to me, in my mind, in the Rider-Waite deck, represents kind of a androgynous figure. They're always like usually a young boy, but it can be an androgynous figure. So, okay, let's get into this because there's a lot to go through. The first is numerologically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The numbers all correspond to different things, and you can carry those across suits. So 1 is usually a singular strength. A lot of times it can represent cutting away. If it's the One of Swords, it's like cutting away old things, and you're just like, and you're just like kind of like a phoenix almost. You're just like that singular presence of what it means to be in the energy that you're in right now. The One of Wands is just like action, and the One of Cups or Hearts, depending on your deck, is giving and receiving love on a new level. And the One of Pentacles or Discs is like change or manifestation, or just like having that financial security. So you can see how 1 can correspond to each of the cards. And the way that this happens is because each suit also has its own energy. So you've got the numerological things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those all mean different things. And then you've got on top of that, it's like a matrix, then you've got what each suit represents. And each suit is going to represent different things. So Cups or Hearts represents emotion or love, or just the emotional, watery aspects of the self. The Pentacles represent material, so it can mean money, but it can also mean like the physical reality, like where you live, how your life is, and all of those things. The Sword is the quality of water, so these are all like also in association with, so Cups is water, and Pentacles is earth, and so Swords is air. And that's sort of how, that's like the realm of thought and the realm of mental action. And then you've got Wands, which is fire, which is the element of action, and of actual doing and that sort of thing. So you've got that sort of matrix interlaid on top of each other. And so it doesn't always match up perfectly, but let's say like the 2 represents balance, and it also represents change. So it depends on which deck you're in. If you've got the 2 of Cups or Hearts, then you're going to have a unity of emotion. That's going to be probably a relationship or a romance. So you've got emotional, and you've got that together, and that's balance. But when you've got 2 of Pentacles, which is material, sometimes that can mean something a little bit differently. Sometimes that means change, or it means how those 2 things are physically interacting, which isn't always a harmonious thing. And you can look at that in the same way of the 2 of Cups and the 2 of Hearts. So as you start to play with the cards and you start to understand these numerological patterns that go through the cards, like I said, they don't cross over to everyone. 5s are not always favorable. You can kind of remember that way. And so, and as you get to 9 and 10, those are always ultimate fulfillment, right, of that energy. So the 9 of Wands and the 10 of Wands are burdens, and they're heavy, and they're hard to carry, and it's like, it's a lot. And it's the same with swords. The 9 and 10 of swords, the 9 of swords is like, you're just kind of being stabbed a bunch, and the 10 of swords is kind of the same thing. So in those cases, and in the case of 9 and 10 of swords and wands, like there's just like oppression and the burden, and like it's just like a lot of energy. But when you get the 9 and 10 of hearts, then that is just like radiant beauty and security. And also with the pentacles, you've got really fulfilling financial security or material security. So it's not to say that wands and swords are bad all the time, and that pentacles and cups are good all the time. That's not true. It's just that how those cards manifest into our realities as they get heavier and heavier can be actually like a really good thing, you know, or a bad thing. And so you really just have to use them and make your own personal relationships with the cards. So those are my cheats for it. You can also read, if you really want to go crazy, you can read Jodorowsky's The Way of Tarot. This book will drive you insane. There's a bajillion things that he notices. Basically, he uncovers like the entire matrix of the card, of each card, and basically explains how like each corner of the card explains a different action or reaction. And I really wouldn't recommend this book for a beginner, because you're gonna just be completely overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed by this book, and it's beautiful, and I do want to study it more, but he's also just talking about a specific deck that I don't use. So it varies deck by deck, like what the cards mean, and it varies person by person of what they mean to you. And so there is the intuitive nature of just like looking at a card and seeing it, you know, and like you can tell yourself little stories about each card. So I can look at the 9 of hearts, and I can see this girl on this card, and I can say she is happy. Okay, I can see that this is like a happy card. She's got love all around her, and it's the 9 of hearts, so that's like a higher number, so it's going to be a lot of emotion. So what I can understand from this card is that it's a very favorable card for, you know, the emotional reality. And you just start, and then you can cross compare that with the book, and you can look it up, and it's okay to look it up, you know. And it's like, this is the thing I think that we really just have to get into our heads, is that it's okay to use your resources and to look it up and to double check, because that's how you learn. So this card actually literally represents fulfillment, and that's just satisfaction and fulfillment and blessed period of contentment. That's exactly what I intuited from looking at the card. I know my cards also, but I'm just saying. That's what you would guess. 9 of Pentacles. Again, the 9. This person looks very fulfilled as well. They look secure, they look happy, they look like they're reaping what they've sowed. And so the cool thing about these cards I love is that they kind of tell a story. So Pentacles, I would show you. Pentacles has like one guy, and he's like digging in the ground, and he's like frustrated. And then the next card is like it's starting, like the pentacles are starting to sprout out of the ground, and he's just like kind of bored watching them. And then the next card is that like he's got like this very big fulfillment, you know, of the thing. It's like it starts with craftsmanship and it goes on until fulfillment. And so you can kind of see the story of it. And it's the same with the major arcana. The major arcana is a story. You start out with the Fool. He's this dumb idiot. We've got a Fool in office right now. We've got Fools all around us. Fool energy is rampant right now. If you study tarot, you just look around and you can see the archetypes that people are playing. And we go through these cycles. So I'm hoping that after we have this energy of the Fool, that the Magician, which is the first card after the Fool is 0, The Fool actually brings us into the Magician, and then we will actually be able to move into our enlightenment that way, because it's sort of like a hero's journey in a way when you start to look at it, and it really represents the cycle of growth and the spiral of growth and starting over. And I don't know that tarot is going to be like the best thing for us in the age of enlightenment eventually, because the narratives that are within it are not always super positive, but that's why you just have to choose your deck correctly. So I know this is a lot of information. I really recommend Introduction to Tarot. In the back of the book, they've got the matrix of like what, how all the cards correspond to the different elements and what that means, and different spreads that you can do. And the way that I just practice with my tarot is I'll just think one question. I'll be like, what's my day gonna be like today? And then I'll pull the Ace of Hearts. So that's giving and receiving love on a new level. I'm being challenged to do this every day lately, so that makes perfect sense. Okay, then I say, well, what can I do to have the best possible relationships in my life? And then I'll get the Prince of Wands. So he's a card of action, of messages, of really just going out and getting, doing the things that I want to do. See, there's like the action of actual physical manifestation of doing, and the Prince, and you can, you just get these themes. So like the Prince, he's on a horse, he's ready to ride into action. You can start to see like, okay, well, princes and pages, they're always like pages especially are always delivering messages. In my deck, princesses are always reading and delivering messages. There's always news associated to them. And the Prince is always ready to ride up and just fuck some shit up. It's like, okay, so I'm supposed to take an active participant. I'm supposed to be an active participant in my relationships. And maybe today I'm feeling kind of sad, so I say like, how can I cheer up today? And I get the Three of Hearts, and that's, friendship and collaboration. You can see that in the card. And so I see my friends in this card. You know what I'm saying? Like, my personal relationship to this card is like people I love and my friends, and like, and that feeling that these people have where they're holding their hearts up and dancing. When I pull this card, I know how that feels in my life. That's like that's an obvious example, but you can associate each of these things to the cards. Now, when you get into the kings and queens and princes and princesses and pages, in particular, you're gonna be like maybe a little bit overwhelmed. These ones are a little bit harder to learn about. You can still use that archetypal understanding of like queens are, okay, so pages are delivering information, princesses are usually receiving or delivering information, princes are going out to do things, queens are residing in their throne. A lot of times queens are just like with their internal. It's that feminine energy of just being, and of course the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Wands, they're a little bit more involved. But when you think of that queenly energy, what does that represent? Kings, also on their throne, but a little bit more active. They're interacting with people. They have a lot of ideas and interchange and interplay of action and of ideas. And so you can start to incorporate those kind of personalities to each of the cards, and you can really even start to just have personal relationships and personal connections with the characters of the archetype. You can write poems. I know one person who wrote a poem for every tarot card, and that's how she learned them. I also, you can write stories. You could write a story that just incorporates the Prince of Wands who falls in love with the girl on the Eight of Wands, and this card represents like signals and flirtatiousness, so that makes sense. And then how does that interact with Judgment? Let's say that Judgment, what happens in the story where Judgment comes in, and you can write a little short story about that, and you can start to memorize these things based on your personal connection to them. The tarot is super deep, and your interpretation of each card doesn't have to rely on a book. It doesn't have to rely on what other people say. You can literally just look at the art and say that's what it means. Somebody might tell you you're wrong. Who cares? You can say the way that I read tarot is more intuitive. You're gonna find people who are very snobby about it, and you just have to let it go. But the coolest thing is that you can learn how to read tarot just with a deck of cards. You can do it with an app. You can find your own deck, and it takes years. I still look cards up. I've been doing it my whole life. So go easy on yourself and join Unicult. Uni bless!